You know how sometimes you just want to get a real handle on a complex idea, like really understand it, but you just don't have weeks to research?
Yeah, finding that efficient path to deep knowledge.
Exactly. Well, that's what we're doing today. We're diving into a really fascinating source, the Tabernacle of Unity by Bahá'u'lláh.
Right. It's essentially a collection of letters or tablets from the late 1800s, written mainly for Zoroastrians, but others too who were asking some big questions.
And the core theme, the real heart of it, is this concept of the oneness of religion.
Mm-hmm. It's fundamental.
Yeah.
And Baha'u'lláh doesn't just state it, he really unpacks it by answering specific questions people had.
And one key person asking those questions was Manakshi Tayyib. He's quite important here.
Definitely. A respected Parsi diplomat, deeply rooted in his Zoroastrian faith. But he was also genuinely impressed by Baha'u'llah's followers and their dedication.
Which makes his questions really meaningful, doesn't it? He
Yeah.
wasn't just casually curious.
Not at all. And their correspondence, these questions and answers, that's our focus. We want to understand Baha'u'llah's view on religious unity through his responses.
Okay, great. So let's jump in. The first major thing Manichaeism was trying to sort out was all these different claims from past prophets.
Right. Some seem to build on previous messages. Others seem to, well, cancel them out. He mentioned specific figures.
Yeah, like the prophets of Mahabad, Zoroaster, some Hindu prophets who apparently claim to be God,
Mhm.
then Abraham, Moses, Jesus, the Arabian prophet. It's a lot.
It really is. And Baha'u'llah's way of addressing this is through the idea of different stations for the prophets, different roles, you could say.
Okay, stations. What does that mean practically?
Well, think of Moses bringing a foundational law. Later prophets might then promote those laws, maybe adapt them. It doesn't invalidate Moses.
It just means the message evolves for a new time.
Precisely. So for you listening, the core idea isn't contradiction. It's more like, oh, an unfolding divine plan. Different players, same ultimate goal.
That makes sense. But what about that specific point Manakshi Ib raised about the Arabian prophet supposedly saying all previous laws were unsound? That sounds like a direct contradiction.
It does, but Baha'u'llah actually points back to the Quran itself. There's a verse, Surah Al-Imran, that explicitly affirms the previous divine messages.
So the source itself shows continuity, not just a break.
Exactly. It's not a complete rejection.
I really like that image. Baha'u'lláh uses the prophets as concordant letters forming a single word.
Yeah, all pointing towards the supreme horizon. It's a very powerful way to visualize it.
It really reframes things, not competing stories, but parts of one big story.
Mm-hmm. And he backs this up with other Quranic verses too, like the one saying there's no distinction between messengers and their essence.
But also that some might excel others. How does that fit?
Well, excelling in terms of their specific station or the impact of their message for their time, perhaps the scope of the laws they bring. It's not about inherent superiority of the soul, but the role they play.
Okay, so summing up this first point, Manakhi Eb's confusion about all these different claims.
Mm-hmm.
What's Baha'u'llah's core answer?
It really boils down to this quote: "Every age hath its own problem. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in."
Right, stop getting bogged down in parsing the past and focus on what's needed now.
Exactly. That's the guiding principle.
Okay, so building on that idea of connected messengers, Manakhi Eb then asks about, well, the nature of God itself, how existence works.
Yeah, he lays out four main schools of thought he knew. 1, everything is God. 2, God plus intermediaries. 3, stars as the main creators. And 4, nature as this eternal, independent force.
Quite a spectrum. What was Baha'u'llah's take on those?
He suggests the second one, God working through intermediaries, is closer to righteousness.
And those intermediaries are the prophets, the messengers we were just talking about.
Precisely. They act as the channels for God's grace and guidance to reach us.
Makes sense. But he didn't completely dismiss the other views, did he?
No, interestingly, he acknowledges a kind of justification in them. He says all things, in a way, reflect God's names and attributes. You can see the divine signature everywhere.
Even in, say, earthly power, like kings.
Yeah, he uses kings as an example. They manifest God's names like the Almighty, the All-Powerful, and he stresses that justice is what really makes their rule legitimate, their fitting adornment.
Okay. Now, there's a shift he mentions, something about after the year 9.
Yes, that refers to the ninth year of the Baha'i era after Baha'u'llah's own declaration. He indicates that the focus then shifted. It wasn't so much about asking these kinds of foundational questions anymore.
But more about recognizing the manifestation for this age.
Exactly. He says quite directly, "This is not the day for any man to question his Lord. Once the messenger is recognized, the priority becomes understanding and following their guidance."
Got it. So let's move to religious laws and principles. Manikji wondered about their basis. Was it mainly broad principles or super detailed rules?
And Baha'u'llah's response is that the root of all principles, always, is the recognition of God.
Okay, the foundation.
Yes. And in this specific age, whatever the manifestation reveals is that fundamental principle.
So it comes back again to be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age. That phrase keeps popping up.
It really does. It's central. He uses another analogy here. This current age is like a sea, and previous eras are like rivers or branches flowing into it.
So the current teachings are primary.
Right. They are the primary principles now. Past practices become secondary ordinances, dependent on that core recognition of God today. Like attending a mosque is secondary to recognizing the divine source for this time.
He also subtly points out that interpretations by religious leaders can sometimes miss the mark, right?
Yes, he hints at the fallibility of human interpretation. That's why he emphasizes the Word of God itself, revealed now, is the ultimate benchmark.
Okay. This leads into another really practical question Manik Shihab had.
Yeah.
How does divine law relate to our intellect, to reason, to nature?
Yeah, should it always make logical sense, or do we sometimes just accept it on faith? He mentions specific Islamic practices.
Like Safa and Marwa, the stoning ritual.
Yeah.
Things that might seem, well, counterintuitive.
Exactly. Baha'u'lláh acknowledges, first off, that people have different levels of intellect. Our understanding varies.
Sure.
But he points to the perfect intellect as the real guide.
The perfect intellect, meaning
He equates it with the universal divine mind, essentially the ultimate wisdom embodied in the manifestation of God.
so our individual minds might struggle, but the source itself is perfect wisdom.
That's the idea. He says, "He that hath me not is bereft of all things." True guidance comes from connecting to that source.
And once you recognize that
Further,
source,
his laws and ordinances are seen as expressions of consummate wisdom, even if we can't fully grasp every reason behind them with our own limited intellect.
right. Okay, so thinking about different faiths, how should they interact? Manik observed quite different approaches, didn't he?
He did. From welcoming outsiders, like he saw in Mahabharata and Hindu traditions, to more passive approaches, to what he perceived as insistence or hostility in others.
And Baha'u'llah's response, what's the core principle for interaction?
It's very clear and foundational. The children of men are all brothers. Full stop.
Universal brotherhood.
Yes. And flowing from that is the idea that you should wish for others what you wish for yourself. Treat them with that fundamental kindness and respect.
So how does that play out practically when sharing beliefs?
Well, the guidance is to inform people, invite them, share with love and kindness. But, and this is key, if they don't respond positively, leave them be. No animosity, no pressure.
That seems like a really important balance. Inform, but don't force.
Absolutely. And Baha'u'lláh also corrected some of Manek Shi'aib's specific observations, like the idea that Hindus and Zoroastrians didn't welcome outsiders.
He challenged that.
Yeah, he pointed out that the whole point of messengers is to guide everyone, and mentioned fire temples being open. He also clarified that Christians were actively spreading their faith, contrary to what Manek Shi'aib thought.
So the main instruction is, what? Serve everyone.
Serve all humanity, for God's sake. Rejoice if someone finds truth. Pray for guidance for those who don't, but never with hatred. He says, "We have called you into being to show forth love and fidelity, not animosity and hatred."
Love and fidelity, not animosity and hatred. That's powerful.
It is. Though he also acknowledges that justice, reward and punishment is necessary for maintaining order in the world.
Right, practicality alongside the ideal. What about specific practices that differ, like dietary laws? Manik Chia asked about things like beef and pork.
Yes, he did. And on this specific point, Baha'u'lláh didn't give a direct, detailed ruling in these particular tablets.
Why not?
He indicates it was due to wisdom, and considering the prevailing circumstances specifically, the Islamic laws dominant at the time and place of their correspondence.
But he still offered a principle to understand these kinds of differences, didn't he?
Absolutely. He brings back that idea of the all-knowing position hath his finger on the pulse of mankind.
Tailoring the remedy to the patient's condition.
Exactly. And again, Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age you live in. The implication is clear. Laws change because humanity's needs and capacities change. What God ordains now is the truth for now.
Like the milk for babies, solid food for adults analogy he uses elsewhere.
Precisely that. It illustrates progressive revelation perfectly, and he underscores the divine authority behind this, saying, "He doeth whatsoever he willeth," and that supreme infallibility belongs only to the manifestations.
Okay. Another tricky area Manichi brought up was religious superiority.
He noted how some faiths, like Hinduism and Zoroastrianism, according to his understanding, viewed themselves as superior but still acknowledged other prophets.
Whereas others seem more exclusive in their claims.
Right, and Baha'u'llah's perspective cuts through that. He says, from one essential viewpoint, all the holy souls, the prophets, are one. The first among them is the same as the last. He points to his book, the Book of Certitude, for a deeper dive on this.
So, again, reinforcing that fundamental unity. What about specific claims, like the Hindu idea that eating meat prevents you from reaching paradise?
Baha'u'lláh gently challenges that, especially given that they accept prophets who might have permitted meat. He clarifies that true paradise isn't about diet, it's about attaining God's good pleasure in this world and the next.
And obedience to the current prophet matters most.
Once a prophet's station is recognized, yes. Obedience to his commands for his time is paramount.
Okay, let's talk origins. Manakshmi had mentioned Hindu and Zoroastrian beliefs about being descended from a specific intellect, Brahma or Mahabad, which led to excluding others.
Yes, these origin stories that create divisions. Baha'u'lláh counters this by teaching that all creation stems from God's will. Adam, the symbol of humanity or intellect, was fashioned by God's word.
So not from some secondary intellect.
No. And he adds that creation itself doesn't really have a beginning or end in the way we think about it. Its true mystery is known only to the prophets, the repositories of divine knowledge.
He distinguishes between different kinds of before, right? Like God's existence versus the world's.
Exactly. God's pre-existence is essential, absolute. The world's is secondary, relative. But crucially, at the moment of revelation, everyone stands equal before God.
Like that Quranic verse, "Am I not your Lord?"
Precisely. We all start from that same point spiritually. Differences only arise based on how we respond, acceptance or rejection. So, claims of superiority based on descent from some special intellect.
Don't hold water from this perspective.
Not at all. He brings it back to, verily we are God's, and to him shall we return. Our ultimate origin and destination is God, not some intermediary figure or lineage.
Finally, there was the question of language. Bahá'u'lláh argued for Persian over Arabic.
Yeah, his reasoning was partly Baha'u'llah's Persian background, and also a feeling that many Arabs didn't truly grasp the Quran's depth.
And Baha'u'llah's response? Did he pick a side?
He praised both, actually. He said both Arabic and Persian are laudable, and acknowledged Persian's significance, especially since the orb of knowledge had risen in Persia in that day.
So Persian gets special praise for the current time.
Yes, this tongue deserveth every praise. But he doesn't dismiss Arabic. He clarifies that while the Quran's outer meanings have been debated and interpreted, its deep inner mysteries are ultimately known only to God.
And linguistically.
He acknowledges Persian's sweetness, but states that Arabic has a greater capacity. It's more comprehensive as a language for conveying complex spiritual truths.
Okay. So, pulling all these threads together, Manichaeib's many questions. What's the single biggest takeaway from Baha'u'llah's responses?
It's got to be that consistent, unwavering emphasis on the oneness of religion, that and the absolute necessity of focusing on the needs of the age. Those two principles just echo through all the answers.
So for you, our learner listener, hopefully this deep dive felt like a shortcut to getting inside some really profound ideas from the Tabernacle of Unity. Maybe you had some aha moments.
Yeah, like seeing the prophets as fundamentally united, or grasping how religious law can evolve, or just that powerful call for love and unity overriding everything else.
It really shows how Baha'u'lláh tackled these complex questions, always circling back to unity, understanding, and what humanity needs right now.
Moving beyond those narrow boxes we sometimes put religion into.
Definitely. And maybe that leaves you with a final thought to chew on. How does this concept of the oneness of religion, explained to these letters, challenge or maybe expand your view of different faiths and their purpose in the world today?
What could it mean for unity and understanding in our own time if we really took that idea to heart? Something to reflect on.
Indeed. We hope this look into the tablets has maybe sparked some curiosity to explore the Baha'i teachings further and see how they speak to the challenges and hopes of our world.